Hello and welcome to my 2020 presidential election preview. This election will be arguably the most historic in our nation's history, with predictions for record voter turnout and media coverage while taking place during a global pandemic. In this video, I will discuss the Democratic and Republican candidates for president and their campaign strategies, outline the toss-up states that will ultimately decide the election, and give my prediction on how election night will play out. And as always, please let me know your thoughts on the video in the comments below. The main players in this election are incumbent President Donald Trump, representing the Republicans, and former Vice President Joe Biden, representing the Democrats. While there are many other candidates such as Joe Jorgensen of the Libertarian Party, Howie Hawkins of the Green Party, and independents such as Brock Pierce and Kanye West, most of them aren't on every state's ballot, so I won't be including them. President Trump was elected in 2016 despite losing the popular vote to Hillary Clinton by about 3 million votes. His presidency thus far has been rather turbulent. While the economy continued to grow stronger, he faced multiple scandals, one of which involving foreign interference in this upcoming election led to his impeachment without removal from office. He was also criticized for slow action on the coronavirus pandemic before testing positive for the virus himself. In 2016, Trump won the historically important swing states of Ohio and Florida, as well as winning big in the Rust Belt. This year, he is continuing his push in these regions while also emphasizing a strong social media presence. He is still continuing in-person rallies with little social distancing. Joe Biden was the early favorite to win the Democratic nomination in a competitive field that included Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris, and others. Despite falling behind in the first few primaries, he got his campaign turned around and was able to secure the nomination easily. In August, he chose Harris as his running mate, making her the first woman of color to ever appear on a general election ticket. During the first presidential debate in Cleveland, he attacked Trump on his controversial presidency but received criticism on his role in the Obama administration. While his in-person campaign events have been limited due to the pandemic, Biden has raised a considerable amount of money from grassroots efforts. In presidential campaigns, states that are either known for being historically divided between Republicans and Democrats or have no clear leader in polls are identified as toss-ups or swing states. These are the states that will swing the election in one candidate's favor, so campaigns typically devote the most resources toward them. This election, there are 13 states that could go for either candidate. They are Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Michigan, Minnesota, New Hampshire, Nevada, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, and Wisconsin. Together, these states make up 199 electoral votes that either candidate could carry. The remaining 339 electoral votes are from states that consistently vote for the same party every year and have a definitive leader in the state polling data. The Democrats are likely to have the 213 votes of California, Colorado, Connecticut, the District of Columbia, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. Meanwhile, the Republicans will receive 126 votes from Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Idaho, Indiana, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Here is a pie chart showing the quantities of a strong Democrat, strong Republican, and swing states. From this data, it is clear that Trump needs to carry a larger number of swing states than Biden in order to win this election. In this segment, I will show two simulations of how I predict election night will go. First, I will show the state results based on when their polls close without the toss-up states. After that, I will go back and add the toss-up states in the order their polls close. This is because the time between polls closing and the reported results for toss-up states will be more significant than others. I'm only grouping them by poll closing time to be more realistic of how the public actually gets the results, and so I can explain why I think each battleground state will go the way it does. It's very likely that this race won't be decided even after every state's polls close anyway. Also, out of simplicity, I'll be looking at Nebraska and Maine differently from how they are actually decided. Both of these states combine congressional district results with the state popular vote, meaning that they usually give electoral votes to both candidates. Since this is a little harder to account for, I'll just be deciding them as one state where all electoral votes go to one candidate. With that out of the way, let's begin. At 7 p.m. Eastern Time, polls will close in Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont. Indiana, Kentucky, and South Carolina will go as red, while Vermont and Virginia go blue. Georgia needs time to count ballots since it's a toss-up. Around 7:30, North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia will wrap up voting. Out of these three, West Virginia is the only state that is not too close to call. Right now, Trump has 33 electoral votes and Biden has 16. 8 o'clock is when 16 states, along with the District of Columbia, close polls, which is the most at one time tonight. Out of them, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Tennessee go red, while Connecticut, D.C., Delaware, Illinois, Maryland, Maine, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and Rhode Island go blue. Florida, New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania need more time. Biden got a big boost here with 76 votes, and he now leads Trump 92 to 76. Arkansas is the only state to close polls at 8:30, so that means 6 more votes for Trump. He still trails by 10. At 9 o'clock, another large group of results come in. Colorado, New Mexico, and New York go to Biden, while Kansas, Louisiana, North Dakota, Nebraska, South Dakota, and Wyoming go to Trump. Arizona, Michigan, Minnesota, Texas, and Wisconsin will take more time. Despite picking up more states, Trump is still behind, 135 to 110. 1 hour later, at 10 o'clock, Montana and Utah will be called for Trump, while Iowa and Nevada are still waiting. Biden is still winning by 16 at this point. 11 o'clock is 8 p.m. on the West Coast, so most polls close by now. This is a big win for Biden as he takes California, Hawaii, Oregon, and Washington while Trump walks away with Idaho. He's now losing by 90 points at 213 to 123. Alaska is the final state to close polls, and they do so at 1 a.m. Eastern Time. It's 3 points for Trump, and the total tally without toss-ups is 213 to Biden and 126 to Trump. Now comes the interesting part of predicting which swing states will go to each candidate. This is difficult, since polls are certainly helpful, but there is always a margin of error involved. I have paid close attention to this race since the beginning, and have a reasonable prediction of how each state will vote. Georgia's status as a Republican stronghold has come into question as Biden and Trump are basically deadlocked in polls. The 2018 gubernatorial election showed that Democratic voters can put up big numbers despite not coming away with a victory. If Biden wants any chance of beating Trump in the Deep South, he needs an enormous turnout that I seriously doubt he will get. Trump will keep Georgia's 16 votes in his camp again this year. North Carolina is extremely high on each candidate's agenda. Trump didn't win by much in 2016, but he is putting a lot of time, resources, and money on the state. Senator Thom Tillis is up for re-election and also appears to be in a dead heat. In spite of most polls, I don't believe Biden will get the turnout he needs, so North Carolina and its 15 votes will stay red. Ohio's polls have been going back and forth since the beginning, with Trump currently holding a very slight edge despite a huge win 4 years ago. It's clear that this is a state he can't afford to lose, and no Republican has ever won the presidency without winning Ohio. Ever. I think Biden's biggest hope is to win back the suburban voters, especially in the middle and south of the state. Still, Trump is making more of a push, and that's why I think he'll take Ohio's 18 votes. Of the consistent swing states, Florida is by far the largest and has had some close results every year. The state government is mostly Republican, but that doesn't mean Democrats have had no success. One region that typically swings the state is the area around Interstate 4 in central Florida. It has been trending blue, but not as fast as other parts of the state are turning red. That, combined with Trump polling more favorably with Cuban immigrants, suggests he will once again carry his home state's 29 electoral votes. A state Hillary Clinton came dangerously close to losing, New Hampshire doesn't vote as blue as the rest of New England. Despite Biden placing 5th in this year's Democratic primary, he has a 10-point lead over Trump in polls. Additionally, New Hampshire's abundance of college graduates provides good reason that it will stay blue. Biden wins the 4 votes, but expect a close race regardless. Pennsylvania going red may have been the biggest surprise of 2016. This year, however, will likely be different. Biden was born here and has devoted enormous amounts of resources. Many pundits believe the Keystone State will be the state that pushes the winner over the 270-vote threshold, so it's a must-win. But with Biden's Scranton roots and encouraging poll numbers, he's most likely to walk away with the win. 20 electoral votes will be a big prize. This is really the first year Arizona has been viewed as a competitive state. Probably the biggest reason is Trump's feud with late Arizona Senator and 2008 Republican presidential candidate John McCain. His widow Cindy endorsed Biden earlier this year. Initially, I was skeptic of Arizona's sudden change, but after looking at poll numbers combined with a growing Latinx population, we could be in for a shock. I predict Biden will carry Arizona and its 11 delegates. Michigan is one of the historically blue states in the Rust Belt that Trump took home 4 years ago. One reason was high turnout in northern parts of the state as well as the UP. However, Trump is known for criticizing Governor Gretchen Whitmer's actions regarding the coronavirus pandemic, and polls indicate Biden has built up a lead of 8 points. Michigan and its 16 electoral votes will go back to the Democrats. Clinton nearly lost here in 2016, so the Trump campaign is fully set on flipping it red this time. Minnesota was recently rocked by the murder of George Floyd, which sparked a national movement on police brutality and race relations. Biden has a strong lead over Trump in polls concerning race relations, and the state continues to lean left, though not by much. Nevertheless, I think it's a fairly safe say that Biden will win Minnesota and its 10 delegates. With those 10 delegates, Joe Biden will cross the 270 vote minimum and, from my prediction, will win the 2020 presidential election and be inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States of America 2.5 months later. Even though we already have achieved a winner, let's see how the rest of the states will vote. A mix of Latinx and college-educated white voters are rapidly changing how Texas votes. Its 38 electoral votes are a big prize that usually go to the Republicans, and the state is projected to gain 3 more according to the census data. Trump has maintained a steady lead in polls, but numbers are closer than Republicans would like. Biden needs a strong turnout in the suburbs of Texas's biggest cities, but even that is still a long shot. The Lone Star State will stay red this year, but its future status is uncertain. Polls were essentially tied until mid-April, when Biden slowly started to pull away. Wisconsin has both strong liberal and conservative voters, but Biden has shown the state much more love than Trump. If he does better in the greater Milwaukee area, as I believe he will, Wisconsin and its 10 votes will go back to being blue. Between 1988 and 2012, Iowa only voted red once. However, in 2016, Trump won by a sizable margin. The Hawkeye State embraces him heavily, and he's had several events there over the past few years. Polls are in a dead heat, but I question whether the Democrats will show up in the way polls suggest. Trump wins again, but it's only 6 points. Nevada has a diverse population that the candidates need to appeal to. Its 6 votes won't do much in the course of the election, but you never know. Polls show Biden outperforming Trump, and Democrats usually tend to do better here than their stats initially say. Biden should win, but don't count out a surge of uneducated white voters for Trump. My final projection is that Joe Biden will win the election receiving 290 electoral votes compared to Donald Trump's 248. Even if this proves false, I am still certain that this will be one of the most competitive presidential elections America has had in recent decades. The country has been preparing for this election for a very long time, so it will be fascinating to see how everything plays out in the end. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thanks for making it to the end.